Hello, Moment friends! Andang here, very excited once again about some recent news for LOTRO. This is the second time this week. Earlier this week, part one of Daddy's LOTRO Guide's interview was posted, and it talked about the licensing agreement, the possibility of a new expansion, and lag. And you can watch my reaction video to that in the description below. There will be a link to that. This is about part two of the interview, which has more exciting news. In the interview, Severlin, LOTRO's executive producer, talks about the possibility of yearly raids. Severlin says, "What we are currently looking at is, and I'm going to say this because it is wildly going to change, so I know that people are going to hate me when we don't actually do this, but we are thinking once a year, looking at the participation, and maybe once a year, maybe once every 14 months, do another raid so that players can experience content in that manner." That is incredibly good news if they can stay to that schedule. They do say that that's basically their plan right now, and obviously very subject to change, but that makes sense. If they are going to be doing an expansion soon, that's a possibility. It makes sense for raids to also be a possibility. This is fantastic news, and Dr. Octothorpe also talks about the return of the raiding population. He says, "I want to add we are happy, delighted, to see how the raiding community in LOTRO has come back to life. We are very aware of the fact that we want to give the raiding community things to do often enough that they do not feel like all the work they put into this raid was all for nothing. We sort of put a ball back in the air. Even if we don't know exactly what cadence we are going to have, the goal is to have the ball bouncing in the air." So this is now two developers saying that they are planning to do more raids for LOTRO. And Severlin did say that they're planning a year to 14 months is their current plan. He does say that players will hate him if they don't actually reach this, which is why he said that it's currently their plan. This is fantastic news. This goes along with their license agreement thing they talked about earlier. They're planning to do raids yearly. That's currently their plan. So that means LOTRO should be continuing on past 2017. Turbine is planning on that if they are currently planning on doing yearly raids. Obviously that is based on participation, but Dr. Octothorpe says that participation in raids is way up after they released the most recent raid to LOTRO with update 18.2. So that is very, very good news that people are coming back to raiding in LOTRO, and it's enough for Turbine to look at doing more raids. That is fantastic. That is amazing. The fact that there are enough players who played through the first raid for Turbine to be looking at making more raids. That is great. Also, Made of Lions and Dr. Octothorpe and Pinion tease about the possibility of a raid with a certain spider. Made of Lions says, "And from a story perspective, there is certainly a lot of fertile ground ahead for the possibility of very challenging raid mechanics and villains." Dr. Octothorpe follows up saying, "Dark webbed enemies." I am not going to say more, but Pinion says more by saying, "I wonder who that could be." Turbine is teasing a Shelob raid. That is fantastic. That is amazing. We went from players thinking before Monday that LOTRO was going to end in 2017. Now we are talking about a possible expansion. We're talking about possible raids yearly. This is a total reversal from what players were thinking. Turbine is finally communicating. They should have been communicating earlier, especially after the layoffs, but I am so glad that they are communicating now. Dr. Octothorpe then talks about raid loot by saying, "We have definitely been monitoring feedback on the raid loot and things like that, and I think going forward, this raid was the first raid that we have done in a long time. And when it came to designing the loot for that, that was certainly a factor. Now that we have some good feedback, and we are going to get a lot more practice, maybe, don't overpromise, when it comes to the gradient with which we give out rewards, I think we might be amping that up a bit. I do not want to get too much into specifics now. Even for the upcoming update for Update 19, we will actually be sharing some of that info on Palantir. And Severlin does add that eventually that will be on the Bullroar test server as well. What does that mean? They're going to be having some type of loot stuff? I'm very curious what you think about this. Or, and this is a major or, I have no idea if this is the case. I'm prefacing that first. I have no idea if this is the case. But what if there's more instances or something like that that they are talking about here that would be basically giving them the possibility to be testing this loot stuff? Or it might just be that they're going to be putting that in the previous raid and testing it with new raid possibilities. I find that more likely, but it's possible they could be doing this. Or since they say it's possible that they could be doing a yearly raid, I highly, highly doubt this, but it's technically possible we could be getting a raid even this year. I really doubt that's the case, but it's possible. Either way, they're looking at loot because they know that loot is a problem, and that is fantastic news as well. You have to have good loot with raiding, and I'm so glad that they're going to be doing that. Hopefully, as a lot of players I've seen have complained about, hopefully the requirements for that will not be as high, or at least some loot will not have as high of requirements, because I have seen a lot of players complaining about the grind and saying that that's why they left the game. The interview continues on to talk about old raid loot and stuff like that. You can, of course, go and check out the interview yourself if you want to hear about that. Basically, what they say is that they're not going to be looking at old raid loot because they want to focus on new content. If they go back and focus on the old raid loot content, then they will not be able to deliver current content as quickly, so new content as quickly, which makes sense. Later on in the interview, Severlin talks about plans to change DPS for the Hunter and the Burglar class. Severlin says, Hunter DPS, yes. Burglar DPS, yes. Burglar survivability, yes. Fellowship maneuvers, not at this time. Maybe a bit later, but right now we are working on other things, and we haven't touched maneuvers because that is a bigger task, I think, to balance those. So basically, they're looking at increasing Hunter DPS. They're looking at increasing Burglar DPS. They're also looking at making Burglars more survivable. They're not going to be looking at Fellowship maneuvers, at least not right now, because they think that that would take a long time, which makes sense if the players are right and they haven't been scaling since level 50. But if they have not been scaling properly since level 50, and I've seen especially level 75 a lot of people point out, then that means that they need to be looked at, but it'll probably take a lot of work to get that to scale properly moving forward. That's probably why it hasn't been scaling, is because they might not even have a system for that if it hasn't been since level 50. And Severlin does say he thinks these changes will be in Update 19, which is great news. Dr. Octothorpe then confirms that Update 19 is planned for a fall release. In the actual interview, they did say October, but then kind of backtracked and said fall. They said they were planning for October and then kind of changed real quick to say fall. So they wanted that wiggle room, which makes sense, but Update 17 did come out in the fall, so it makes sense that Update 19 would be coming out in the fall as well. So this has been a great week of news for LOTRO, starting off with the possibility of an expansion to LOTRO for the first time since 2013. That is incredibly good news. Continuing with the discussion of the license agreement, talking about how it's just normal business practice, and that Turbine plans LOTRO to go much farther, with plans to 2018, and the only reason the plans are to 2018 is because they don't feel the need to plan even farther than that, because those plans might change. Then, adding in the news that there will possibly be yearly raids for LOTRO. That's the current plan at Turbine, which is just absolutely amazing that they are currently looking at having possibly yearly raids for LOTRO. And I've seen people saying, well, they are promising a lot. Yes, they are, but they might not be promising as much as you think, because to do an expansion for a lot of players, that means also doing a raid. And so I think it is possible to reach everything that they've said so far. I think it'll be a lot of hard work and hard to achieve, but I think it is possible. And I think it's important Turbine has a lofty goal for LOTRO. After we had the recent raid for LOTRO, which players seem to like, as Dr. Octothorpe points out, because the raiding population has increased. Since players seem to like the new raid, it would make sense for them to do more raids. And if they're going to be doing raids, possibly every year, that's their current plan, then why not also make it be an expansion? I think it's feasible, and I am very excited about this news. And not only are they looking at adding in these raids, but they're also wanting to make sure that players have incentive to do them by talking about the raid loot and how they hope to make it be better as they continue to practice. That's what they say. We are going to get a lot more practice. Maybe. They're not wanting to definitively commit to this, but they have the goal to be able to do this. That is important. Turbine has lofty goals again for LOTRO, and if they can achieve them, this will be a fantastic future for LOTRO. This could truly revitalize the game far beyond anything has done since the Helm's Deep expansion, and really before the Helm's Deep expansion, because the Helm's Deep expansion, when it released, took a lot of players out of the game. That is a big deal. I'd also like to point out that Turbine is finally communicating with the player base. This site, Daddy's LOTRO Guides, as far as I can tell, was started in March 2013. And Turbine's talking to them. They asked Turbine for an interview, and Turbine gave it. That is fantastic. Turbine is willing to talk to players. This is what we have been asking for years and years from Turbine, is to be talking to players and listening to players, which it seems they are doing. They're looking at doing more raids because players actually turned out, and players obviously want more raids, as you can see if you ever go on the forums. So this is all fantastic news, even if it doesn't all come about, because Turbine once again has a goal, and that goal is lofty, but I think that they can reach it. They have the potential to, and hopefully they will. Let me know in the comments what you think about this additional LOTRO news. Let me know if you're excited about it or not excited about it. Let me know if you like raiding or don't. And if you haven't already, be sure to watch part 1. There's a link in the description. I highly recommend it because there's a lot of LOTRO news there. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and enjoyed this news. If you did, feel free to give my video a thumbs up. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you again real soon for more content.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit the like button below. And if you'd like to see more of my daily content, feel free to subscribe, and you'll be notified when that new content comes out. And also, if you'd like to help support my channel and help me continue to create high quality videos, feel free to support me on Patreon, and you can get all sorts of great rewards in the process. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again real soon for another video.